Welcome to the Justin Fields Show. No, sorry. Fanduel Week 11. The question of the day, to stack or not to stack? So there's a lot of controversy, as always, about whether to double stack or single stack, or if you have more of a running type quarterback, if it's best just to run him naked, no homo. Most of the studies that I've seen and research that I've done and conversations with other professionals in the Fanduel arena / DraftKings, every year it seems like it sort of gets more towards pushing for a double stack. I've always been a fan of the double stack personally. I feel like that's the only way to optimize your lineup. And also, I feel like when a quarterback gets you there and he breaks the slate, he's going to take at least one and most of the time two players with him, unless just all the touchdowns go to one player, but that's hard to do. And I like to stack differently on FanDuel because of the fact that you're more chasing touchdowns than you are chasing performance, if that makes sense, because of the half PPR as opposed to DraftKings, which has the full point PPR. So let's dive into this slate and see what we got. A lot of people are saying that they don't like this week. It's limited options. I actually found a lot of quarterbacks that I like and a couple different ways to get to be contrarian on this slate. We're just going to start at the top. We got Josh Allen rocking a Q tag. He's expected to play, I would imagine, since he played hurt last week. Looked fine. Didn't run the ball as much as he normally does. So keep that in mind with this whole elbow injury that he's got. I'm going to go to my rankings and pull up some bills so that we can see what's looking good and what's not. So we got Justin Fields priced up again this week. I think I have a theory that Jalen Hurts might get overlooked a little bit, sandwiched between Josh Allen with a good matchup, now that that game has been officially moved to Detroit and will be played in a dome. And then, of course, you have the whole Justin Fields craze, which rightly so at this point, the way he's playing ball, crazy amount of rushing yards. It's just absurd how much rushing yards he's getting. Now, and you could say you want to play him naked because of most of his points coming off the ground, and we'll talk about that when we get to him. So, Josh Allen, of course, there's numerous ways you can stack these bills. I'm double stacking all day with him. I don't see why you would go any other way with that, especially with his carries being down recently. So let's pull these guys up. Stephon Diggs is very expensive, which he normally is, but it just stood out to me more this week, I guess, because we don't have Jefferson, we don't have Kupp. We don't have the Dolphins receivers either. Florida team's on bye this week. So Diggs looks good. Looks like there's some leverage with him. He's got almost a 17% optimal rating, which I like. So, other than that, I normally go Gabe Davis on my single entries when I stack with him. And then I'll try to get different. Normally with McKenzie on my double stacks for GBP tournaments. You can play Knox. I'm not a big Knox guy. He's actually coming in with negative ownership this week as far as everything I've seen. But, you know, it's hit or miss with tight ends. Got Andrews back on the slate this week, so that'll help us a little bit with that. Yeah, ain't much to it other than that. So you got about three different ways you can go. Also, you can stack with Singletary. I played with that a little bit last week. Actually worked out good. My problem with Singletary, not only in a stacking scenario, but also playing him as a running back, is the fact that his ceiling is just not tremendous. Like, for example, last week he scored 2 touchdowns and ended up only with 16 fantasy points. So, I mean, I guess the floor is good on the bright side. So after that, we'll go to Jalen Hurts, who's next on the board, 8.8K, only $400 cheaper than Josh Allen. A lot of people have been doing a lot of single stacks with Jalen. Last year, everybody was running nakeds and singles, and I think the number's starting to project more that you can get there better with these double stacks than you can with the singles and the nakeds. So, and the way he's been passing the ball this year, man, is just incredible. So I'm hoping that he gets overlooked. You know what? Let's check early ownership and see what we got going on. See if there's any validity to my theory here. And quarterbacks, ownership. Jalen Hurts coming in at about 11% so far. It's early in the week, so to speak, so we'll get more accurate numbers tomorrow and Saturday. I like to do my lineups, my final lineups, Sunday morning about as late as I can so I can get my final analysis as accurate and close to it will be at lock as possible. So yeah, he's coming in third. You got Josh Allen right now, which I'm going to assume that Justin Fields will be higher owned, especially against a putrid Atlanta defense with a lot of injuries in the secondary. Then you have Justin Fields at a little less than 14% and Hurts around the 10-11% range, followed by Lamar Jackson at 9 and Dak around 8. After that, it kind of levels out around the 5% range and lower. So I'm going to go to my rankings, pull up some birds. Shout out to my birds taking their first L this year, which I think is a good thing for them, man. I think it's really going to wake them up. And, it's a reality check, man, when you take a loss, especially to a team like Washington, whatever they're called these days. So with Goddard out, it kind of slims down your the ways that you would stack Jalen. We could go cheap tight end. We'll check that out in a second. Get these rankings up so we can see what we got. I'm actually surprised AJ Brown, he's got an ankle thing going on, which they said won't be an issue, but you know how they like to talk down injuries in the NFL especially. So we actually have Devontae Smith coming in higher owned than AJ. I like that for the AJ play, and it could also have something to do with the price. You got AJ Brown coming in at 8.4K, and Devontae Smith is $2,000 cheaper at 6.4. So that's probably got a lot to do with that, those numbers and the ownership on there. Miles Sanders is not getting a lot of catches out of the backfield, which I hate. The Eagles used to be so good at the screen game with the way their line is and how agile they are, but they don't do that a lot under Sirianni. A lot of it has to do with them running more of a RPO-based offense, which is run pass option for those of you who aren't familiar with the scheme. So Jack Stahl is over-owned too. All the Eagles look over-owned as far as their chances of being optimal and their stature in my maximum potential rankings. So that's not favorable. Quez Watkins is even over-owned. So much for my hope with my Eagles stacks. I'm still going to get to them. I mean, for one, it's my team, and for two, it's the best team. Next, we move on to Justin Fields. So, Justin Fields has been the optimal quarterback, I believe, the last 2 weeks, if I'm remembering that correctly. And it's ironic because the last week he was the Millie Maker was won with Justin Fields being ran naked, and the week before that it was the double stack with Mooney and Komet that got you there. Which I say that's ironic because Komet actually, I believe, had a higher fantasy score this week than he did last week. I'm gonna take some shots at hoping that they're gonna work Claypool into the offense more now that he's probably acclimated to the scheme and the playbook. So hopefully that'll help me to get different. We'll pull up the Bears and see where their ownership is and what we got going on with that. Great matchup, man. The Bears are just like, they're so many advantages to playing Chicago this year because you got Justin Fields who's going crazy on the ground. And then not only that, but their defense is so terrible that they're almost in shootouts every week. And as I say that, I see David Montgomery just jumping off the page as probably the best running back option at 6.2K, but that's for another show and another time. Darnell Mooney is coming in almost double ownership as per his optimal percentage, as is Komet. So it looks like we have a common trend here. It looks like that all of these pass catchers on the expensive quarterbacks, and of course these are guys that we want to play because of their versatility on the ground, it looks like they're all kind of coming in just slightly over-owned. And that might be a sign that maybe these stacks aren't as good as I feel like they are. And might be part of the reason why I've heard people saying that there's not a lot of options on this slate as far as quarterbacks and as far as stacking, as far as stacking your quarterbacks. And, you know, the numbers seem to say that. I would consider myself sort of a numbers guy, but at the same time, I'm a firm believer in the eye test. And I like to consider myself as someone that can see talent and like to try to get ahead of the curve on that. So I think it takes like a balance of, you know, football knowledge and analytics put together that gives you, you know, a good all-around DFS game. I wanted to see where Claypool came in on my rankings, and he looks terrible, which sucks. But that could have a lot to do with the fact that he just didn't get much work last week. You know, and you can't predict. When you're dealing with analytics, they're not going to predict something that hasn't already sort of transpired, if that makes any sense. So it's hard to really... That's when I think that your football knowledge and the eye test comes into play, because you want to get ahead, right? You don't want to... I hate the wait and see approach. You don't want to wait until a player starts to produce more than expected and then jump on them, because by that time everybody's on them and you lose that advantage that you gain by taking some risks, man. It's all about risk versus reward, when it comes to that. Commit, negative. Everybody negative, man. So everybody's over-owned as far as the top 3 quarterbacks and their compadres that we will be stacking them with. So let's get the hell away from them and move on and see where we can get some good leverage at. Next up, we have Lamar Jackson coming in at 8.4. I like Lamar this week. He's got Carolina. Only thing about this game, it could get away from Carolina early. And also, like, the style of play that Baltimore likes to use, they're gonna just run the shit out of the ball, whether it's with Lamar or whatever running backs not injured this week. I think Gus Edwards is actually questionable. If not, man, Drake looked good last week. I hate to say I've never been a big fan of him, but he looked really good, and I wish I would have had gotten out in front of that. Sort of what I was talking about earlier, how you can take advantage of it. Lamar Jackson I believe he was a DNP yesterday in practice for an illness. So we'll keep an eye on that. But, okay, now this is perfect for our whole 2 stack or not 2 theory. Now, see, this is where I might kind of sort of go against the grain a little bit. I think because of their style of play that you can... Okay, normally, whenever you consider stacking a running back with your quarterback, it's because the quarterback gets because the running back gets targets. So it doesn't have all that... it doesn't have like a... What's the word I'm looking for? Doesn't have any negative output as far as, taken away from the quarterback's upside like a running back can potentially do. And the way the league is changing a little bit now, we're realizing that it's not as counterproductive to stack running backs and quarterbacks anymore, just because of the rush rates being down more and more each year per team. So anyway, what I was saying is a lot of times when I play Lamar, I might go for sort of, especially on Fanduel, I'm going to go for sort of a run stack, so to speak, where I'll stack him and the running back and just try to capture all that touchdown / yardage upside that you get with them, considering their scheme and how they like to run the ball down your throat. So I might experiment with something like that, and maybe if Gus plays, stack a Lamar Gus and just try to get all of the Ravens ground production / touchdowns. Okay, so other than that, we got a little Duvernay action. He's actually got some positive leverage. He's only about 2% owned, so I kind of like that. I might work with something like that. And Drake, they're all these Baltimore options other than Lamar are under owned, even Andrews. So maybe I would reconsider and go with like an Andrews Duvernay stack. I'm not sold on Duvernay. He had one game where he really flashed since old buddy's been out. And then since then, he's been really quiet. So that might even be a better reason to jump on that. But Mark Andrews looks really good. He's got almost a 20% optimal rate. And he's only being ranked at about a 13% ownership. So I'll definitely try to incorporate that in my Baltimore plays. Moving on, we got Joe Burrow next. I'm not as comfortable with Joe Burrow as I initially thought I would be, considering that Pittsburgh doesn't have the best defense, but their line's been really shaky. That's one of the things that I'm worried about. And Pittsburgh's defense is actually playing a little bit better than what the numbers show, especially with Watt coming back. So I'm not as sold on Burrow as other people may be. So I'm going to go down to Daniel Jones, who I kind of like. A couple interesting things about Daniel Jones and his opponent, which is the Lions. Of course, their defense is trash, so we really can try to capitalize on that matchup. Also, Daniel Jones has been averaging about 7 rushing attempts a game and somewhere around 40 yards per game rushing, which is pretty good for him considering. So that's going to push his floor up a little bit. And not only that, but the Detroit Lions have given up the highest scoring quarterback 2 out of the last 3 weeks. So that could be another reason to roster him. The only reason I'm not fully sold on it is because of the stacking options. Like, who do you go with? Do you go with Slayton? He's had a couple semi-big games, but I don't think he's had more than 6 or 7 targets this year per game, so that's not really good. Wendell Robinson's a good stacking option. So maybe then we go back to the running back theory with this one and do like a Jones, Barkley, Slayton type of double. We know Saquon's gonna get carries. Detroit can't stop the run or the pass. So I kind of feel like you almost have to go that route if you want to try to maximize the Giants' upside in that game. Next up is Kirk Cousins against Dallas. I'm a little hesitant with Kirk, too. A lot of people are jumping right in this game, assuming that's going to have one of the best totals because we have the Vikings and the Cowboys. They have a high projected team totals, so I think people are a lot higher on Cousins because of the fact that you have Justin Jefferson. Another thing that's kind of shying me away from that is his price tag. Justin Jefferson is, I believe, he's the second highest receiver on the slate. 9.1K, man, so you're really paying for that, especially if you're stacking him with Hawkinson, I think he's got something like 19 targets in the last 2 weeks. It's crazy. But he's going to cost a little bit as far as tight ends are concerned as well. So, and then if you run it back with Lamb, that stack can start to get expensive. So the little bit of value that you would get with Kirk Cousins kind of goes away with the fact that you're paying up for the stacks and run backs in that option. Dak I like a little bit more. I feel like Minnesota's defense is a lot worse than the Cowboys' defense. So I feel, even though I don't like the stacking options as much, I feel like you could probably capitalize a little more off of that. So I'm going to lean a little bit more towards Dak than I am Minnesota. I'm going to pull the Cowboys up and see what the rankings look like. Maximum potential rankings, Dallas Cowboys only. Pull it up. Starting to see a little bit of positive leverage. Not with CD. He's almost about an even play. Noah Brown has a little bit of positive leverage. Gallup does not. Schultz does not either. Man, it's going to be hard to get good leverage with any of these stacks that I like this week. And maybe this is why everybody was having so much trouble with this slate. Somebody who I noticed their team, had a good top stack percentage that I didn't really expect to be as high in the ratings. I think they really like 2 or 3 as far as top stack odds. And that is Marcus Mariota. Does give you a little bit on the ground, kind of, sort of, I guess. The only reason it surprised me so much, not because of the matchup, of course, because you have the shitty Bears defense, but it's the fact that they just don't throw the ball a lot. And that could be a problem when you're talking about, slate breaking ability. Now, the one good thing about an Atlanta stack, it's got good value, right? You can go with Pitts in London, and it's going to be cheap. Who do you run it back with on Chicago, It's great for value savers. I guess if the ownership comes in good, pull that up real quick. I guess you could kind of stack them, run it back with maybe like a Mooney or something, and then you could just get crazy chalky after that because I'm assuming that none of those players are going to be that high owned. So that could be one advantage to help you get to like the high paying running backs such as Saquon Barkley and company. So that could be one of the only reasons that I end up stacking Mariota. The numbers look good, man, and people like this game. It's got, I think, the highest total on the slate. Okay, we got Kyle Pitts coming in around 10%. We got London a little less than 10%. But they're all positive leverage. Kyle Pitts actually looks really good. He's almost 20% optimal in my rankings. So I'll probably go there a lot, especially with his salary not being that expensive. Okay, so I want to talk about two guys real quick other than that. Now, these will be my sleepers and my value guys. And they will be Pickett and Heineke. I like Heineke coming off that performance. Not so much as what he did because his numbers were trash. I think he only had like 7 fantasy points. But it's the Houston matchup that I like. And they've actually been good against quarterbacks fantasy-wise, but their defense is garbage, man. There's just so much to take advantage of. And Heineke's going to sling that ball, man. He don't care. He's going to let it fly, double, triple coverage. He don't care. And that's sort of the same way I'm feeling with Kenny Pickett. Both of them boys are going to let that ball. They're going to sling it. And, you know, it could work for them or against them, but at the same time, I feel like the ownership's going to be really low, and we could take advantage of that. And it's sort of along the same lines as the Mariota stack, where if you stack these teams, you can just push the chalk in the rest of your lineups and run with that and be good to go. So these are the quarterbacks I'm interested in. I'll probably stick with mostly my top 5, Allen, Hurts, Fields, Lamar, and then maybe I'll probably go with Dak. I am going to play some Barrel in Minnesota because I want to have some 4 o'clock stacks in there. I don't want to just stack heavy on the 1 o'clock games and at 4 o'clock I'm just sitting there with my dick in my hand hoping that my totals stay and watching myself drop in the rankings. So that's a little bit of my strategy heading into quarterbacks. Stay tuned for my running backs video where we'll talk about some running backs and go through my running back checklist to see how they stand out and who are the best plays. Thank you guys for your time and joining me. Please like the video and subscribe for more content. Ask any questions. If you want my ranking list, anything from me, man, I'm an open book, guys. Hope you enjoyed the show. See you next time. Peace. Baby. Mo. This thing's not, for one, I don't know if it's played because it's not turning off, which means it probably cut off. And for 2, whatever you're hitting on my phone is just clicking the whole time in the speaker.
It's reading
Click,
a text
click,
in your phone.
click, click,
So
click,
that's
click,
messing your video.
click, the whole time.
The
like-
battery died again. It's on 10%.